Hi everyone, welcome to the show. I'm Tiffany.
And I'm Seb. And today we're going to be looking at this month's literature unit. We're going to be talking about a really well-known children's book, right, Tiffany?
That's right. I actually really love this author and all of his books as well.
Yeah, he's called Roald Dahl, and he did a lot of very funny, but also um, very creative children's stories. Have you read any of them?
Of course, I've read The Witches, Willy Wonka and the Chocolate
Mm.
Factory. Those are actually really famous books by Roald Dahl as well. So I love reading his books. What about you?
I really love Matilda. I think I saw
Oh
Matilda
yeah.
first as the movie. There was a movie in the 90s called Matilda. But later on, I went and I read the book, and the book is very funny, and it's got a very unique take on, childhood and everything. And so, like, that is one of my favorites. But today, we're going to be looking at a different Roald Dahl book. It's a very well-known Roald Dahl book. Can you tell us a little bit more about it, Tiffany?
All right, so it's called Fantastic Mr. Fox. Okay, I think this
hmm
also was turned into a movie not too long ago as well. And it's also a really fun story about animals and humans. And we can read a little bit more about that together later.
Right, right. Yes, this was a really popular movie when it came out because it used a style of filming which we've talked about in a previous episode called stop motion, where they made the animation by taking pictures of toys and models and slowly moving them to create the effect. So the movie is really good. You should definitely see the movie, but today we're talking about the story. So let's get started.
Reading.
Fantastic Mr. Fox. On a hill there was a tree, and under the tree there was a hole. And in that hole lived Mr. Fox, Mrs. Fox, and their 4 children. Mr. Fox was a cunning animal. Every night he would sneak out of his den to steal something tasty for his family to eat. He would visit one of 3 farms at the bottom of the hill. These farms were huge. Their owners, Bogus, Bunce, and Bean, were all very wealthy and very cruel. Bogus was a chicken farmer. Every day he ate 3 chickens, so he was very fat. Bunce was a little man with a bad temper who raised ducks and geese. And Bean, who farmed turkeys and apples, was as skinny as a pencil and only drank cider. Bogus, Bunce, and Bean hated Mr. Fox. They often tried to catch him, but he always got away. At last, they decided to work together to kill the thief.
Okay, so our story begins with the setting. It begins with the place that the story takes place. And we start with this sentence. On a hill, there was a tree.
All right, so next it says, and under the tree, there was a hole. Okay, so we can imagine this really cute place where we have a hill, there's a tree. Underneath that tree, we have a nice little hole there.
And what is important with this hole? Well, the story continues, and in that hole lived Mr. Fox, Mrs. Fox, and their 4 children. All right, we're getting started with our grammar for this episode. So by now, you're already very confident with using simple sentence structures. So subject, verb, object. The fox lived in the hole. But did you know you can actually invert this and do it a different direction? So we can actually start with our object, move the whole to the beginning of the sentence, and do it that way around first. So let's look at the sentence again. And in that hole lived Mr. Fox, Mrs. Fox, and their 4 children. So Mr. Fox, Mrs. Fox, and the 4 children are the subjects of the sentence. They are the ones who live in the hole. So normally we would put them at the beginning of the sentence, right? But here we can actually change the order. We can move it so that they are at the end and the hole is at the beginning. So it becomes, and in that hole lived Mr. Fox, Mrs. Fox, etc. So there's lots of reasons why we might decide to use this structure, what we call an inversion. And one of them is to emphasize where or when something might be happening. So we use these structures when we want to put a lot of emphasis on a place. So obviously in this story, we're saying that they live in the hill, and that is kind of the most important thing we take away from the beginning of the story. So here's another example of how we can use an inverted sentence like this. Far beneath the sea live many strange kinds of fish. Okay, so again, it's the fish that are living, but we are moving the sea, the place they live, to the beginning of the sentence, and that's our inversion. So we also saw that they are foxes as well. So just to remember, a fox is a small kind of reddish-brown animal with 4 legs and a long bushy tail that lives in places like North America and in the UK and Northern Europe. So these are animals we're talking about here.
Yeah, so basically a fox is 狐狸. And I remember in the UK that foxes also run around in the city as well, right?
They do. They cause a lot of trouble. They steal food out of people's bins.
So they're kind of like the equivalent of the raccoon in the US, because the raccoons do that as well in the States.
Exactly. They're like British raccoons.
Super cute. All right, well, let's continue reading. It says, Mr. Fox was a cunning animal. Okay, now, as we know, foxes are really, really, really smart. So we can use the word cunning to describe them. Cunning just basically means smart, clever, but sometimes in a tricky or a kind of sneaky way. We can also use the word sly as well, S-L-Y, sly, just to mean, you know, the same thing. So yes, how come, you know, they can steal food from the garbage cans? Is because they're really, really smart and they know how to do that without getting caught.
Exactly. They're very sneaky, very clever animals. And so the story goes on to tell us why we're calling Mr. Fox cunning. So it says, every night he would sneak out of his den to steal something tasty for his family to eat. Okay, so this is just like the foxes in the UK. They sneak out at night and they go through people's bins and they steal food. So he would sneak out of his den. So what does sneak mean, Tiffany?
All right, well, let's take a look at the word sneak. Sneak means to move in a quiet and kind of secret way in order to not be noticed, okay? Because of course, if you know, are very, very loud and you want to steal something, you're going to get caught. People will notice you. So to sneak means to move in a very, very quiet way. And also, I think he did this because he doesn't really want his wife, Mrs. Fox, to know how he's actually getting food for the family as well. And also, I think a lot of students might do this. If you're a student, I'm pretty sure you have a curfew, meaning that you have to get home at a certain time. Did you have a curfew before?
I didn't, but it's because I lived in the countryside and there was nowhere I could go. So, so I was never going to stay out late.
Okay, well,
Yeah.
I had a curfew, and I remember if I wanted to go out, my parents would be like, okay, you have to be back by whatever time. And then sometimes I would get in a little bit late, and then I would have to go in the door very, very quietly. So I would sneak into the house to make sure my parents don't notice when I come back. So that's what sneak in means.
Okay, so that's what Mr. Fox is doing. He's being very careful. He's moving out and making sure no one can see him. And he's sneaking out of his den. Now, a den is a place where some animals live, normally foxes and lions. Fox dens are holes in the ground where they hide food and raise their babies. We could also say that foxes live in burrows, which are, again, long kind of tunnels underground. And that's because a burrow is basically the same as a den. In the US, there's another meaning for den as well, isn't there? We can also say that a den is a living room, as in, have you seen the remote? I don't know, check the den.
That's right. We also see another word here. We see the word tasty. Okay, so why is Mr. Fox going out at night, sneaking out at night? Because he wants to bring something tasty for his family to eat. Now, when something is tasty, it just basically means it has good flavor, it's delicious, it's yummy. For example, we can use it in a sentence like this. This restaurant has really tasty food. It's one of my favorites.
That's a really good point. So what was Mr. Fox doing? Where is he going to steal this tasty food? We're going to find, as we find out, he's not stealing people's garbage. The article says he would visit one of 3 farms at the bottom of the hill. And what kind of farms are these? Well, it says these farms were huge. They were very, very big farms.
So he was actually really, really, really smart. He didn't go out to, look for garbage for his family to eat. He was looking for fresh, tasty food. But there's a problem here. It says their owners, Bogus, Bunce, and Bean, were all very wealthy and very cruel. Okay, so these farm owners, they had a lot of tasty food. They were very healthy and they were very cruel. Let's first learn what the word wealthy means. So wealthy is an adjective and it means to have a lot of money, to have a lot of wealth. It means you are very rich. Okay, for example, we can say Bill Gates is a wealthy man, but he gives a lot of his money, or he gives lots of his money away. Okay, so even though he's very wealthy, he has a lot to spend, but he's actually really nice. He gives it away to places we can call those charities as well.
Exactly. So we could say that he's a very generous person or a charitable person. So when we're talking about somebody who has a lot of money, but they don't like to share it, we can say that they are stingy. So somebody who is stingy really holds on to their money and they really hate to share it or give it to anybody else. And it seems that these 3 farmers are quite stingy. So the first, we go in and we learn a little bit more about these farmers. Bogus was a chicken farmer. Okay, so I think we know what that means. He farmed chickens. And there's something else interesting about him.
Okay, next in the article, it says every day he ate 3 chickens, so he was very fat. Yeah, that's a lot of chickens for one day. Usually I have like 1 chicken for 2 meals, but he had to eat 3 chickens in one day. So he was a very, very large man.
Yes, I'm surprised he didn't have to go to hospital. I think I would be sick if I ate 3 chickens.
I know, too many chickens, too much meat.
Exactly. So that's our first farmer. The second farmer was a man called Bunce, and the story says Bunce was a little man with a bad temper who raised ducks and geese. So I think this is a bit of a joke that Roald Dahl was making, because when somebody is very angry and very small, we often say in the UK that they have small man syndrome, and that is when you are, angry because you're a small person. So I think that this is a joke about how tall he is. And we learn that he has a bad temper. Now, I've kind of given away what temper means. Temper is a noun, and it's basically your mood, especially your mood when you feel angry or frustrated. So people who are bad-tempered get angry really, really easily and are rarely happy. So we can tell that Bunce is not someone that you want to hang out with, He's not a nice person. Here's another example with temper. My mom hates her job and she always comes home with a terrible temper, right? So having a terrible temper doesn't always mean you're a bad person. It might just mean that, you're really fed up or frustrated, 很难过. So children and toddlers also get into terrible tempers. And when they get really angry, we often say that they throw temper tantrums, which is when they scream and cry and get very red in the face. Did you throw a lot of temper tantrums when you were a kid, Tiffany?
Actually, I did, because, I star sign, I'm an Aries, so we're very hot-headed. We actually are known for bad tempers. So I actually threw a lot of temper tantrums when I was a kid. And I remember my temper tantrum was whenever I was angry, I would just jump on the bed face down and just like, and just like scream and cry. And then after a while, I fall asleep and then I'm fine. So that was my temper tantrum as a kid.
You sound like a monster child.
I'm a lot better now, don't worry.
Okay,
What about you?
No, I didn't throw a lot of temper tantrums. I used to do something else. It's called sulking. That's S-U-L-K. And when you sulk, you become very quiet and very moody. You also have a bad temper, but you don't make a lot of noise about it.
Okay, I was the noisy bad temper kind. You're the quiet kind. All right. we saw another word here. We saw the word raise, okay? Raise is a verb and it means, okay, it has a lot of different meanings. First, it's to teach and take care of a child. Like, for example, your parents raise you. But here in this article, it means to keep and take care of something like an animal or a pet. Okay, so for example, old MacDonald would raise a lot of animals on his farm. We can also use, we can also use raise in a sentence like this. We can say, we found a lost kitten and decided to raise it.
That's a very good one. We could also say that you decided to adopt it. So the difference between raising and adopting something is when you raise it, you're looking after it, and adopting is the process of taking it in and starting to raise it. So there's a slight difference there. So we also saw that there was a third farmer, didn't we?
That's right, okay? His name is Bean, and in the article it says, and Bean, who farmed turkeys and apples, was as skinny as a pencil and only drank cider. Okay, so he looks a little bit different than the rest of the farmers too.
Yes, the book actually has drawings, and Bean is a very tall, thin man who looks like a rake, and he's very, very skinny. So skinny is an adjective, and when somebody is skinny, they are very thin and often in an unhealthy way. So normally when you say someone looks skinny, it's not really a compliment, it's more like saying you're too thin. So for example, Elva looks very skinny. Do you think she's eating enough food? So in the story, Bean obviously is very skinny because he doesn't eat any solid food. He just drinks cider. Now that sounds extremely unhealthy, especially because cider in the UK is always alcoholic. So he drinks a lot of alcohol and doesn't eat any food. In the UK, we might say that he is all skin and bones. And that's a phrase that means someone who is so thin, they look like a skeleton. And that's never a good thing. Okay. So we also saw a slight grammar structure there, as skinny as, and we can use this structure with most adjectives to make comparisons. So when we say Bean is as skinny as a pencil, we mean he is very skinny, just like a pencil. He's very thin. Another example would be Jenna is as tall as a giant. That would mean that Jenna is very, very tall, and she's almost the same height as a giant, a real giant.
All right. So as Seb mentioned, cider is a type of drink that people drink in the UK. It's always alcoholic, right?
Yes, but in Taiwan, I think it's not always alcoholic. You can buy non-alcoholic cider.
I was just going to say in the US, it's still made out of apples, but then we don't have any alcohol in it. In Taiwan, people drink the 苹果西打. So that's basically what cider is, without the alcohol. If you're legal and you want to have fun, you can find ones with the alcohol as well.
Yes, you can always find it. Okay.
All right, so let's continue reading.
Okay, so we also saw this, moving on, we learn more about the relationship between these farmers and Mr. Fox. So Mr. Fox is very cunning, but the farmers do know who he is. The article says, Boggis, Bunce, and Bean hated Mr. Fox. Okay, so they really didn't like him.
Okay, so next in the article it says, they often tried to catch him, but he always got away. Of course, he's a cunning fox, so I think he was very smart. He knew how to trick them and run away before they could catch him. Okay, here we saw the word or the phrase to get away or get away, and it just means to escape from a person or a place. For example, we can say the police didn't make it in time, so the thieves got away.
Okay, so they really don't like him and he's always getting away, and at last they decided to work together to kill the thief. Okay, so we've got a couple of phrases there. The first one is at last, and that basically just means finally. So after a long time, they decided they were going to try and work together to catch Mr. Fox. Here's another example of how we can use it. Jonathan spent all night trying to do the difficult math problem. When at last he solved it, it was already morning. Okay, so a lot of time had passed and at last he solved it. Our last vocab word for today is thief. So thief is a noun, and a thief is someone who steals things. So Mr. Fox is a thief because he takes things that belong to Boggis, Bunce, and Bean. It doesn't matter that they are mean and cruel, they still own those things. So technically, Mr. Fox is a thief. Here's an example sentence of that using that word. The police caught the thief and took him back to the station. Okay, so I think this is where we have to leave day one of our story. We have just enough time for a For You chat question, so let's check that out now.
For You chat.
All right, so our For You chat question for today is it ever okay to steal? Explain your answer. A very good question, actually.
It is a very good question. So I think almost always it's not good to steal, right? I think the general rule is you shouldn't steal. We can all agree that it's a bad thing to steal. There are different circumstances, I think, though, that change how bad it is to steal. So, for example, Mr. Fox, he's taking food for his family, and it doesn't seem like he can get food anywhere else, or at least that's what I understood from the story. So I think that's different from, say, stealing someone's mobile phone, you know? You don't need someone's mobile phone.
Yeah, or tricking someone to like steal their money or like doing a scam or something. I think that's wrong if you're purposely doing it with like the intention to hurt someone. But under this circumstance for Mr. Fox, I agree. I think it's a little bit hard. Like, yes, stealing is wrong, but then, he's trying to provide for his family. That's the only thing he can do, right?
Yeah, he's trying to take care of them. So, yeah, it's like Robin Hood, right? If you're stealing from the rich to give to the poor, how bad is it? So you guys, I'm sure, will have lots of opinions about whether stealing is right or wrong. Well, it is wrong, but whether it's always the same or whether it's different depending on the circumstances. You guys talk about that, and we will join you tomorrow for day 2 of our story article. Okay, so we'll see you then. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Vocabulary Review.
Tasty. I love this hamburger. I think the ketchup is what makes it so tasty. Wealthy. This is a very nice area. Only wealthy families have enough money to buy houses here. Temper. Jacob has a terrible temper. He'll shout at you when he's angry. Raise. The farm raises cows and sells fresh milk to visitors. Skinny. Ralph is so skinny. You can see his bones through his skin. Thief. Please, officer, stop that thief. He took my wallet.
智慧小补帖
Cunning. Sneak. Den. Cider.
以上节目是由活用空中美语制作。活用空中美语杂志，请洽询全国各大书店。如欲索取试听教材，请来电02-2364-4000 02-2364-4000，或上网查询，网址是 www.english4u.net www.english4u.net